Okay, so welcome to the Wednesday, February 8th meeting of the Town of Richmond ARPA Committee. Before we jump in, is there anybody present remotely or in person who would like to make a public comment about any item not on the agenda? Seeing none. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Our agenda, actually, I'd like to make one comment. I apologize for missing the last meeting. I know that nobody's particularly mad about me, but I just want to explain. I was actually in the building. We had a meeting of the Justices of the Peace to organize the Board of Civil Authority. I wasn't feeling well, but I figured I could make it through a half-hour meeting. But then I snuck out the door. And so that's why I was technically here, but not in the meeting. But Jeff, I understand you did a fantastic job. Okay.
I'll say it was an exciting meeting.
Looks like a lot was covered. Okay, so our agenda is to review minutes of the January 11th and January 25th meetings. And let's go ahead and go into those. We do have a quorum, although we don't have as many as I guess we'd like. Does anybody have any comments, additions, deletions, changes, what have you, to the minutes from January 11th?
Just a note on that. I went back, there was a comment at the last meeting about a quote from Jeff in that. I went back, looked at the video, tried to make it as accurate as they could. There's sort of a two-part quote broken up by a quote from Jay, and then you come back and talk about how it was removed from the capital plan. So I made sure that it accurately reflected that, and that was the one change requested from last meeting.
Jeff, have you got a chance to review that change?
No, so it's in here?
Yeah, it's pretty much verbatim. So there's two, well, what you said, what Jay said, and what you said about the capital plan.
Okay.
Molly, welcome. Josh, Molly's never with us.
Hello.
Okay, so Jeff, are you taking a quick peek?
I'll move that we approve the, it's the January 11th one where there's change. I'll move that we approve those.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the minutes of January 11th? Hearing none, please state your name and your vote.
This is Jeff, I.
Tom, I.
Rachel, I.
Molly, I.
Josh?
Oh, Josh, sorry.
And Jay, aye. We have accepted the minutes. Moving on to the minutes of the January 25th meeting. I have looked over them. I watched part of the video. They seem good to me.
Okay.
Does anybody have any additions, corrections, deletions, or other changes to the minutes from January 25th?
I'll take your word for it, Jay.
Okay. Seeing none, may I have a motion to accept those minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes of the January 25th meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Jeff. We'll let Molly have the second. Okay. Are there any comments? One more time, any comments on the meeting minutes from the 25th? Okay, seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
This is Jeff, I.
Tom, I.
Molly, I.
Rachel, abstain.
Josh, I.
And Jay, aye.
And hold on, Jay, I just realized I forgot I should have said abstain for January 11th because I was in Puerto Rico.
Remind me, Molly, where in Puerto Rico were you?
I was in Rincon.
The reason I ask is because in March I'm going to Puerto Rico.
So Molly abstained from both, right?
Just from the 11th.
It sounds like everybody went to Puerto Rico.
So
Rachel abstained from the last one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just didn't get to read it, so I didn't want to vote on it.
Well, fair enough. I just want to make sure I record it correctly. Thank you.
Okay, so our next item on the agenda is review of the Transportation Committee's very nice letter to us discussing transportation plan. And I just see a message in the chat. Let's just, oh, that's just Rachel. I'm sorry. Okay, so Chris, why am I saying Tom? Chris, are you ready to, you're here, and would you like to present, or would you like to start off the discussion, or what?
Why don't I do a quick overview of the memo, and then I can answer any questions. And I'm really just going to be talking about the money and the project components. So it gets a little complicated when you break up projects and you try to submit grants that are capped. So this is the Bridge Street project is now been broken up into two pieces. And this is the Complete Streets project. And then after we did that project, we did the Bridge Street East Sidewalk project. So we have two planning projects, and that is where the entire Bridge Street project comes from, because we added on the sidewalk for the lower part of Bridge Street to that project, which wasn't included in the first study. So that explains why we have two different projects along the same street. We have submitted for a grant, as my email indicates, for $320,000. And we won't find out about the results of the grant application probably till sometime in May. And that application is for the part of the project that was found in the Bridge Street East Side Sidewalk project, which is the sidewalk from Jolena Court on the east side of Bridge Street to Esplanade. And the town is requesting funding of $256,000 from the Agency of Transportation. And we have a local match that the town has committed of $64,000 for a total project cost of $320,000. And I have included a hyperlink in so that for people who want to look at the application and what the project elements are, they can. So that is a project we have applied for funding. The part that we have not applied for funding is at the top of that email, number 1, inclusion of the Bridge Street Complete Streets project at a total project cost of $254,509. Now, in the report, it's going to have a project cost of $219,509, but Revy included $35,000 for municipal project management oversight on the TAP grant. So I did a similar thing that Revy did, is I added the same amount. The project amounts are very similar. I added 35,000. So that's how you get to the 254,509. And that is our request of the ARPA committee. This is our number 1 project. If we do get the TAP grant from the state, this will complete the entire makeover of the street, providing new pedestrian pathways, providing bump outs, providing mountable curbs by trucks, but still afford pedestrians safe landing place, especially at the market. And that is really our request. We had a second sidewalk project that the committee wanted additional information on, which I can provide you. I'm not asking for that project this evening. I think there were 2 alternatives. I think the one that we selected, alternative 1, was $730,000, box beam guardrail total cost, and alternative 2 is $540,000. And it goes to Valley View, the sidewalk. But I think between Southview Road and Valley View, if you're familiar with that stretch of roadway, it's very steep. To Southview from the school, I think it's fairly straightforward to build a sidewalk. Between Valley View and Southview, the slope is steep, and I do not believe the width is there. And so we had questions about that when we accepted the report from the consultants. They had indicated that they had been out to the site, but it's hard to understand how they would build a sidewalk there. And you can build anything, engineers can solve anything, but there's a matter when cost becomes prohibitive. And I really want to find out from that report, what does that extra leg cost between Southview and Valley View? Before I would recommend it to the select board or the ARPA committee. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions I think Kara had raised at one of the meetings that you were not part of, Mr. Cole, she asked how many people would that sidewalk serve? Just wondering, like, would students from Southview actually, or from Valley View, actually walk to and from school if they had a sidewalk?
It's the amazing thing about infrastructure. It's kind of like the field of dreams. Once you build it, they come. And so if there are families living in Southview with children, yes, they will walk and use the sidewalk to go to work because you will have put a safe piece of infrastructure in there. How many families live in Valley View that have kids? I have no idea.
But it's also sorry. It's also, I mean, it's great that families, kids, but it's also a connector downtown for older adults too that
absolutely
live up there. So it's really it's an asset for the whole community, no matter your age.
Absolutely, and the reason is you're extending your sidewalk. You know, we have a sidewalk that ends at the school. Now we're extending it as a small project from the school to Southview. I completely support that project for the reasons Molly just stated, and because it does make it a safe route to school for kids. But we're not asking for that project this evening.
Yeah,
we're asking.
Okay, so I had a couple of questions. So the previous request from the Transportation Committee was for the $64,000 for the Esplanade to Jolena match. Was that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and now the ask is instead of that, or in addition to that, is the $254,000.
In addition to that.
Okay, so the total would be 64 plus the 254. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be another 64,000 approximately to match it.
Yes. Okay, and this 35,000 for local project management, is that correct? Is that what?
Correct. That's also that also would be an 80-20 split. So the town isn't picking up the total cost of that project management. You're only picking up the 20% share of that 35,000.
Okay, so the total ask would be, if we're counting on our fingers and toes, we're looking at 219,509. That would be all.
It's 254,509 all in.
Then you said of that 35,000, we would be only supplying 20%.
Why is that?
I'm sorry. My apologies. You're using 100% ARPA money. Are there any matching requirements for ARPA money?
No, but it's desirable, highly desirable.
Okay, so 254,509 is the total project cost.
Okay, so, but really, it depends on how you think about this project cost, right? So like if the total Bridge Street from Esplanade up to the Hatchet, somewhere around there, is 320 plus 254, of which the 320 we get 80% match, and the 254 we do not. So, you know, it depends on how you present this. We are getting match for sidewalks on Bridge Street. It's just not the entire project. Is that right? Does that make sense to you?
Not to me, but my brain works differently. So we have applied for a TAP grant, Transportation Alternative Program, in the amount of 256, which we're going to match with 64. That creates a sidewalk from Jolena Court to Esplanade. The upper Bridge Street part with bump outs and other sidewalks cost a total of 254. You're not getting any. I'm confused by the question because you have an ARPA grant, which is federal funds. So you are spending federal dollars on the upper portion of Bridge Street. It's not town money.
Well, it actually is town money. It's in our bank account right now. So, and we can.
Correct, but you're raising the point though that you're trying to overmatch or you're trying to leverage money from
No.
different pots. No, I didn't understand the point you're
No,
trying to make.
I'm trying to communicate it in a way that looks so that we are getting match money from the TAP grant for a portion of the sidewalk that goes from the Hatchet thereabouts all the way to Esplanade. It's just not, it's broken down into two different projects.
Okay, so I just would like to make sure, because I don't want to get people confused and frustrated.
Municipal oversight would be 35,000.
Right, but I thought
Who is that?
I made a mistake.
Okay, so is that entire amount, it would not be an 80-20 for that.
That's the entire number.
Okay, but would the town, from whatever copper we're getting the money, at one point I thought you said, and I may have misheard, that the $35,000 municipal oversight, that we would only be expected to supply 20% of that. Are we expected?
You did not mishear. That's what I said until I corrected myself, that it's not a US DOT grant, which would be an 80-20. This is an ARPA. And so it's whatever the town chooses. You're going to have to pay 100% with the ARPA, right? Unless you want to use it for match for other federal dollar programs.
Okay.
But
Okay, and so who would that municipal oversight money, we have salaried staff right now. It would be hiring somebody to do this municipal oversight? Where does that go?
It's typically, yes, you're hiring a clerk of the works, somebody who's an owner representative on the project to ensure that the construction work is done to the specifications that you're paying for. Yes, you could have somebody from the town do it if they're familiar with project oversight and can be a clerk of the works.
Okay, and that's already.
Pardon me?
We would be doing a similar thing with the other. We would be doing the similar thing with the other Bridge Street project. Is that included in the 320,000? There is already included oversight.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Revy included that in the TAP grant.
Okay.
Okay. So if I may, I'm kind of filling out a spreadsheet to make sure that my little pea brain is not misunderstanding. So the Bridge Street East sidewalk, the total project cost would be 320,000, but if the TAP grant, which we are by no means guaranteed to get, if that comes through, it would be for 256,000, and so we would be expected to come up with only 64,000. But if we don't get the TAP grant, then we don't have to come up with anything because we wouldn't do the project.
Correct, and the 64,000 is in the sidewalk reserve fund.
So okay, so we already are. We have already budgeted for that in some fashion in our capital plan.
Correct. Not in the capital plan, in the budget, in the reserve fund.
Yeah, the reserve fund is our capital budget. The reserve fund is our capital budget.
I don't believe so, but you don't have a 5-year capital budget with all the money identified. You have a list of projects that you would like to do. Some of them you won't ever do, but it's not a real capital budget in the sense that you're making bonding commitments to do every project in that budget. No,
we're not committed, but what do we have in the capital, in the reserve fund for sidewalks, Josh? Do you know?
64,000.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, we can follow up on that number, but right now, in terms of from whatever source, whether if the town is going to its existing reserve fund, or it's pulling the ARPA money, or it's mugging people downtown and getting their pocket change, or whatever. Right now, we would be looking at 219,509 for the Bleak Street project, plus 35,000 from this website, plus 6, which we believe we may already have set aside. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, if you want, we would also, if we don't get the TAP grant, we're going to need that, whatever that number is.
If we do the project.
Yes, if we do the project. Correct.
And Chris, you said we would hear about the TAP grant not till like later in the spring?
Yeah, I think it's May.
Okay.
Okay. That's probably within the time frame that we could look at. The clock is ticking, but I don't think May is that far off. Lastly, the Jericho. What are you referring to the Valley View to School Street? Is that just the Jericho Road Sidewalk Project, or what is your name for that project?
Jericho Road Sidewalk Project.
That's so hard to remember. I will try though.
I was trying to keep it easy.
Okay, and so the Jericho Road Sidewalk Project, if we decided to fund it by whatever means necessary, the total estimated project cost for that would again be?
There were two alternatives. Construction costs are estimated at $510 to $520 for each alternative. Alternative 1 has a 5-foot sidewalk with a box beam guardrail. Alternative 2, and that costs $730,000 total. Alternative 2 is $540,000, which is a 5-foot sidewalk with a 5-foot grass strip. Those included going to Valley View, as I mentioned, and I would like to get a second opinion from our contractor.
Right. But just to check, just so I can make sure I'm getting it right. Alternative 1, 5-foot, correct me if I start saying this wrong, 5-foot sidewalk.
Here,
with...
Jay, I'm gonna send you an email.
Okay. So we'll keep it simple for now. But so right now, are there any numbers in here? Complete streets, 219,509, municipal oversight 35. If we get the TAP grant for east sidewalk 64, if we don't get the TAP grant 320, alternative 1 for the sidewalk project 730, alternative 2 540. Is that okay?
Okay, but you're right now, you or the transportation committee is not asking us for the 730 or the 540.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
It's under a nice priority.
What'd you say, Jay?
I couldn't hear Jay.
I couldn't hear.
When I say nice to have, incidentally,
the volume's getting messed up.
I'll go off video in case that's something.
I don't think it's us. I think it's them, Chris.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's never us, Molly.
I was just gonna say that, but
It's probably that fancy new camera, which is really cool. But
the owl.
I must have missed something. What?
Yeah, you guys bleeped out for 30 seconds.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, so we already spent the money elsewhere. You might as well go home now.
I was just saying that the sidewalk would be great to have, and I'd love to have it, but it's not as much of a priority as the items at the top, the complete streets project and the east sidewalk project.
Yeah, I don't see why you're adding that down at the bottom, Jay. They're not asking for that.
Oh, I know. Because numbers were being tossed around, I wanted to make sure that
this was a request by Cara. She wanted to know what that project cost. So
okay. Sorry.
She'll have the information.
Okay.
But based on my visit last time, I went up and looked at the slope, and for the life of me, I can't see how you'd get a sidewalk on there that's cheap. I think it would bring the total project cost down. So I really want to investigate that before we talk to the select board again about providing funding for that particular project.
So the other aspect of this is for the Bridge Street projects, while the final engineering has not been done, the final scoping has been done, the preliminary engineering has been done. So those projects are further along as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And so the engineering for going up the South View, is that what we're calling Jericho Road?
Jericho Road sidewalk.
Jericho Road side. The engineering, not even the preliminary engineering has been done on that.
No, we were showing some very preliminary.
No, the preliminary engineering hasn't been done. It was a true feasibility study, not a preliminary engineering, which is what we got on Bridge Street. You're absolutely right, Jeff. What we got on Bridge Street was a higher level of confidence in the design and plans and the cost estimates.
Okay. I see Rachel nodding frequently every time we discuss the Jericho Road sidewalk project. I assume, Rachel, that's because you used to live up Front Court and you walked that a lot.
Well, I know a lot of people who would use it, but that's okay. I'm nodding in assent that I understood what's being discussed, so it's all good.
Yeah, it's just, if people are asking who would have used it, Rachel's neighbors would have used it. And it would be very nice to have, but it's not part of the official request. So the official request we're looking at. And Chris, again, thank you for pulling all this together. We are looking at, we see what the ask is, and we know that the TAP grant we will hear later in the spring, possibly in the May timeframe. Is there any other information that people, present in person? Tom, you've been relatively quiet. All right, any questions you've got, Chris?
No, I've just been listening. So.
Okay. And just a little background. Just a little background as to why we submitted the TAP grant for the Jolena Court to the sidewalk is the Transportation Committee felt fairly strongly that our municipal buildings are on that side of the street, and it becomes a real safety issue for elderly in our community to have to cross the road to get to the building's public space that they want to get to. So we just thought that that was a higher priority than the upper part of Bridge Street. But the whole project will reshape our village, and that's the part of the town that everybody uses. Everybody uses the village.
I do have one quick question. Is Chris, I don't know if you have this or not, but is there any kind of like a mock-up of what a completed project would look like? Looking east and west on Bridge Street, and how that would look in terms of like aesthetically, and then also in terms of like, you can tell that it raises the safety level by, subjective 10%, 100%, whatever. Do you have like a mock-up of what it would look like?
I can't remember exactly what was in there, but yes, they did some of that. And I put the two links. I put the link in the Bridge Street Complete Streets Planning Study is in a email I sent to Jay, so you can find the hyperlink there. Or if you go to the town website and look at the transportation, or actually go to the town planning page, and the town planning page contains all of the reports and studies that the town has done for the last 20 years. That's what
Josh and I will make sure either during or after this meeting that all those documents are shared with members of the committee.
There's a pedestrian plan that's quite cool. That actually talks about all of these projects. And there's a lot of information. It's about 50 pages. It's really
in full color. With
it is.
Harmony. Yeah.
It's an impressive plan.
It's very comprehensive, and it will dramatically improve the safety in our village. And that is, we're really focused as a transportation committee on safety projects and focusing on pedestrians and bicycles, because that is the gap we have in our transportation infrastructure in town. It's not just roads, it's safe paths for bicyclists and pedestrians. And there are areas of our town that, we could use that investment and people would feel safe. When we did our master plan for the town, the folks who live on East Main Street really have a challenge with that intersection and crossing that street with their kids, so their kids can use the sidewalk to walk to school. It's just, there's no curbs on the other side. It's just not safe for them. So we do lots of public hearings and take a lot of input, and these are the towns we're confident that have the town's support, or at least the ones that came out to the meetings and public hearings that we've given.
Okay, and so just a bit of recap, Chris, as you probably recall from looking at the summary spreadsheet of all the suggestions, suggestions for improvement of Bridge Street itself, suggestions that would improve pedestrian bicycle safety were very, very popular suggestions. We also have, just for getting this in public records, and people watching this on MCTV later may not be familiar with this, I would just like to pop this up quickly, refer to it. Our ARPA criteria, the money has to be able to be spent by close of the year 2026. It needs to be allocated by 2024. If at all possible, we want to leverage other grants. And so this would be an example where if we did get the TAP grant, being able to only have to spend 64,000 is obviously, that's great. In terms of project expected to be long-lived, I don't think the improvements are just going to turn into smoke and go away after 5 years. This would be a very long-term improvement to our town that gets it. You know, I hate to use the cliche, get it ready for the 21st century, but we're already in 2023 and we've got a 1950s era downtown. Is it going to improve revenue? Criteria number 5. Well, I wouldn't say directly, but I think indirectly you can make a case for it because it will make people feel safer using Bridge Street and possibly increase business for the businesses along Bridge Street. And if anybody has any points, other points of view that I'm not thinking of on that subject, please share. Benefits can be widely shared and accessible to all residents. Perfect. I mean, who Chris just said it himself. Everybody uses Bridge Street. Publicly proposed capital project will result in improved. What match?
I think we're ticking all the boxes, Molly.
That's pretty
increased public safety, clearing out of the parking. Thoughts?
So, quick question about this. Did we settle on these criteria?
We did this,
yeah. Okay.
But I think they're very good criteria. I think you guys did a great job of the last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, this was, I think I did this.
Yeah.
So I just basically cleaned it out. You know, we had criteria kind of all over the place and just kind of consolidated.
But I look, for example, what Jim was talking about last meeting about, you know, this needs to, there's certain, even though we claim revenue loss, and as was pointed out several times, that means we don't have as many rules as we would otherwise. You know, we can't use it for paying down debt. We can't use it to lower the taxes. But if at all possible, we should use it for, you know, in my opinion, this would be. Not saying. Do you have any thoughts on this, Mark?
No, that's good.
Jeff?
So I just have a process question. So it seems to me that we should not decide on any particular project until we
Y'all are still going in and out, just so you know. Like we can't hear you now at all.
project.
I don't think you don't realize it.
Yeah.
To do something that may.
I'm not sure the owl is all cracked up.
Yeah.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear us now?
Now I have Rachel's echo.
Rachel. Okay, so what I did was I turned off.
No, that didn't fix it.
Okay,
although we can hear the.
So Chris, I just had a question. How soon would you need to know if we've decided to give the transportation committee the funding? How soon would you need to know in order for it to be allocated and then spent in the designated amount of time?
It's a tight timeline, but it's doable. It's not a complicated project. However, you know, the sooner that municipalities approve these expenditure of funds, they're going to be at the head of the line, looking for contractors, looking for designers, engineers. I can see a log jam of these projects throughout the state of Vermont, and if everybody's waiting to the last minute to make their decision for that deadline, I can't predict what'll happen.
Right. That's why I was asking, because I'm just kind of wondering what your time frame would be and how would it align with, when we are supposed to legally spend the ARPA money. Like if we drag on making a decision until you wait until you get or don't get the TAP money, like is that too late for you to complete the thing, or is that okay for us to wait that long?
I think it's fine. It's you're talking about calendar year 26. We have to be done. So December 31st of 26. So, we would want to start the project on December 31st of 2024. And it sounds like your decision making is by 2024. So this May of 23, we'll know that if we get the TAP amount or not. And if you guys make a decision to fund the upper part of Bridge Street in its entirety, which I would recommend if you're going to do it, because you will save money on construction by not having to pay mobilization costs for two different contractors at two different times. And that's a significant chunk of any sort of construction project, is the mobilization, bringing all your stuff down there, all your forms, creating the work site, everything. And so that is something to consider. You will be paying more doing it in two stages.
Right. Thank you.
So in terms of our audio problems, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, this is good.
Okay, let's hope it stays working. If it doesn't, I'm going to check the chat. There's a message in the chat. Okay, so if we cut out, please drop a message in the chat. The reason I brought up the criteria is not because I'm saying that we've actually voted to accept those criteria, although I do think was very pleased to look in the minutes in the hearing and the recordings and see those criteria, because I do think they're very solid criteria. And I think that, irrespective of whether they dot every checkbox in a hypothetical perfect set of criteria, I think this would be a very good project. I'm not saying we're going to vote tonight to spend it, but I think this, just speaking as one member, I think these projects would be a very good use of ARPA money. So anybody else have any, Jeff?
Just one last thing. I just looked at our reserve fund balance, Chris, just so you know, is we have currently $40,000 in our reserve fund for new sidewalks. So we don't have the 64,000, but we do have 40,000 in a reserve fund for sidewalks. And
yeah, I was counting current year appropriation as well, Jeff.
Yeah, and I guess we have another 40,000 in the appropriation for this year. So you're right, we would have enough. So we have, if our budget passes next month, that we will have $80,000 in reserve fund balance,
which could be used as the TAP match.
Which could be used as the TAP match.
Correct. Or you could use ARPA by waiting until May, depending upon how you want to do it. But to Rachel's question, I don't think the next 3 or 4 months makes a big difference in terms of that particular project. And we could take the time to see the way it sugars out.
Okay, so last, Chris, again, I want to thank you. I just want to make sure, does anybody else have any more questions for Chris on anything, up to including expansion tips?
And I do think the criteria is excellent as well. And this project does tick all those boxes.
Yeah, well, Chris, thank you so much. Yeah, Tom, Molly, and anybody who contributed. Thank you so much for your work on the criteria. Chris, thank you so much for.
Thank you.
And thank the rest of the transportation committee.
They're good people. Bye now.
Okay, thanks. So our next item on the agenda, we have 20 minutes, is the capital plan. And the item on the agenda simply says review capital plan. Obviously, what we're probably looking at here is what things in the capital plan could we pay for out of ARPA money that would meet the ARPA criteria and goals. And so Jeff has it open in front of him, right? Or no, you have the budget, you have the reserve funds.
I have the reserve funds.
We did get a copy of the capital plan in the email. And so I want to make sure that we use our time as best as possible. Josh, do you want to bring up the capital plan, kind of talk us through it? Talk us through, we don't need to entire review the entire capital plan, but kind of.
Yeah, you know, in general, a lot of what's in the capital plan is equipment. So there's fire engines, grader, that kind of thing. The only two things kind of that fit in my mind for what we are talking about, because we're not talking about buying equipment. You know, it would be sidewalks is in there, and the town center building is in there as well.
Okay.
So those are the two. You know, we also have, you know, there are other buildings as well. It's not just the town center building.
So are we not talking about? Sorry to interrupt. Equipment because it's not long enough lived, or the monies that are set aside?
We have not talked about equipment in part because of that. You know, I think that has been a presumption. It hasn't been, you know, hard and fast, but it doesn't really fit, you know, the criteria that
I
you.
agree. Yeah.
And we already are budgeting for it.
Yeah.
Right. So I brought up the capital plan. I am showing the table of contents, and as you can see, it does fall into the two broad categories that Jeff's already enumerated, capital equipment and capital infrastructure. And I just want to jump down to
maybe recreation.
Well, yeah, item 18, pages 18 and 19. That I hate it when the page numbers do not coincide with. Okay, here we go. It says recreation is supposed to be on a page, but I don't see it.
I don't think there's a lot.
I would also just add about the equipment. The other thing is, I don't recall seeing a lot of input from the public at the outreach, people asking about equipment, like wanting it. I mean, there may have been some, but it certainly wasn't one that had a lot of percentage. So that's why it hasn't occurred to me.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody begging to buy a new fire truck, although I imagine if we did, people would want rides on it. When I was a kid, that was the biggest thing when they did fire truck rides. I do want to address.
I think there is recreation.
I do want to address water and sewer, and there's a very particular reason. I know this is no one's favorite topic lately because it's been kind of contentious. At the most recent meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission, actually several meetings before that, like under 8 years, we've been discussing running water and sewer out through the gateway to the mobile. Contemplating going past it to the mobile home park, water and sewer to the gateway. Okay, they're having trouble hearing us again. Let me switch which mic I'm using. Okay, can you hear me now? Let me turn the minus sign right. Keep hitting the minus. Yay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Briefly, water and sewer out through the gateway has been kind of, this may sound trite, but a solution search problem. We know it would significantly spur development out there, but what kind of development? You know, a lot of us have talked about how wonderful affordable housing would be. And I don't think there's anybody really who is against affordable housing. But just because we run water and sewer out there does not mean some developer is going to say, oh, I want to put up affordable housing, because they could just as easily put up market rate. And the only way that I can see justifying spending ARPA money on water and sewer extension is if there is more or less a commitment on someone's part to build affordable housing. Otherwise, I don't really see that just expand the grand list in general is by itself a worthwhile use of ARPA money, even though it is something June mentioned at the last meeting. So right now we have Bart and I have tried to get discussions going with Champlain Housing Trust and Cathedral Square about maybe managing affordable housing projects along that stretch of road, or really anywhere else in town. But absent, you know, something further happening in that regard, I wouldn't suggest using ARPA money on that purpose. Rachel, go ahead.
So it's actually about housing.
Now you're muted. Or actually, no, no, you're not muted. I turned my speaker off. Yeah, turn it up briefly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I actually watched one of the last housing meetings just to see where they're at with affordable housing. And they said right now there's like they compared it to like Heinsberg, where Heinsberg was given a plot of land to develop and then they gave it, or sold it to Champlain Housing Trust. And they were talking about the three places where it could potentially be put. And one of them is on the edge of the Farr Farm, which sounded unlikely that the Farrs even would like to sell that land. And then Jolena Court, but the developer is not interested in using the land for affordable housing. And then the third is Browns Court. And there's I know growing up here, people would hate it, honestly. And my mom said that there's something with it was deeded to the town to be a green space forever. So I don't know if that's contentious as well. But I was wondering if there, and I had suggested this many meetings ago, but is there a way that some of the ARPA money could buy a section of land? And even if we went and approached the FARs and said, hey, could we use ARPA money to buy a piece of land from you specifically with the intent that we make affordable housing? And I haven't been able, the next housing meeting is tomorrow night. So I'm hoping to maybe pop in on that and get kind of an update from them. But I don't know if that's something to think about, or if that's not really, that they were looking more at where water and sewer already is, as opposed to the gateway, which, it isn't. So.
No, okay, we obviously have a few bugs to work out in the system. Every time I speak, we have to turn, every time somebody in the room speaks, we have to turn down the speaker. Rachel, you're absolutely right. We have had this idea that, and I've been just as much of these discussions as anybody, build water and sewer to the mobile, and affordable housing will magically come. Bard and I have talked to Champlain Housing Trust. We've talked to the REAPs. We've talked to Cathedral Square. The REAPs have been looking for a way to make a business model out of doing housing there. And these two organizations, that's what they do. But that's not obviously the only place we can put affordable housing. Bard and I talked yesterday, and he pointed out once again, why not Browns Court? We did talk to the developers at Jolena Square, at Jolena. They offered us a not very great deal that in return for allowing them to build a lot more buildings, they would make 10 of the units, pardon, they would make a certain number of the units affordable for 10 years. And we didn't think that was a great deal. If it's only going to be for 10 years, it's like, come on. Erin Farr is on the Water and Sewer Commission. And the other night, I think she said they're talking about doing some stuff out there, but I don't think she was like, let's build affordable housing on my land. Browns Court, Bard and I, does make a lot of sense, but we would have to check with attorneys about, was it perpetually deeded as affordable? I mean, as open space. We know that in order to avoid alienating an entire part of the town, we would not be able to take over the entire area. We would need to keep significant portions of it open as green space, but we could still probably fit 30 to 60 affordable housing units up there by going up instead of out. But
does it have water and sewer?
This is obviously something that falls under the purview of the housing committee. Housing committee right now is 3 people, because they did, there was a lot of interest at first, and then as Ravi left, we're now down to Virginia, Connie, and the chair. And the select board, speaking as a select board member, we would love to have more people who would like to take part in that. So I plan to be at the housing committee meeting tomorrow night too. And anybody else on the call, listening remotely or in person, who would like to come. But yeah, we need to get some traction under this discussion. My point of bringing this up was really originally to say, you've heard off and on about, can we use this for water and sewer? And my vote is not, unless we have a commitment from somebody to put affordable housing in as a result. And right now we do not have that commitment. So I just would like to, I'm speaking only for myself, for the whole committee, but any ideas floating around out there about use this for extension of water and sewer, I think have to be tabled. Without a guarantee that they would build affordable housing, I just don't see the public benefit. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess I would just say, Jay, you're never going to get a guarantee from an affordable housing developer
Can you hear
We
me?
can't because we have to apply for
Oh,
all
we
of
can't
like,
hear her.
oh, you can't hear it? Can you hear me, Rachel? Oh. Can you hear me now? Rachel, you and I could have a really good meeting. We'd have been done by now.
Right. Try again. It looks like they might be able to hear you.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay, so all I was going to say, Jay, is that no developer, affordable or not, is going to guarantee building housing before they have their funding in place. I mean, I can tell you that affordable housing developers such as Cathedral Square, we prioritize housing where there is existing water and sewer, and where there's an existing need. And I'm sure Richmond would be high on nonprofit developers' sites if, for places to develop if there was water and sewer. There's no doubt about it. And if there was, like Rachel was saying, land that the town is saying, here you go, or here's a great deal, which is what happened in Heinsberg. So, so I just don't want, I do think that water and, extending water and sewer lines is a reasonable thing to think about to use these funds for, but I think it's more of an issue of timing with the dollars than whether or not someone's going to guarantee affordable housing development. That's all.
We can't hear Jeff. You're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear anybody. Still can't.
Okay, talking to my
mic. So I have a suggestion. Make progress.
Jeff, you have to face the computer. We can't hear you when you turn towards the screen. Just face directly
forward. Can you hear me
forward.
now?
Yeah. Yep.
And but can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. How about as a way to make progress on this? I think affordable housing is something that we've heard a lot of, both at the select board and through ARPA. And if there is something that we could do for affordable housing, I think that would be constructive. How about if we, for next meeting, we look up what the deed says on Browns Court and just see what that says. That's an existing parcel of land that already has water, sewer. And if the deed says, no way, Jose, is there any way that we can do anything with it? Then we can take it off the list.
Good.
How do we do that? Or who does that? Like, how do you find a deed? I don't even know how to do that.
Ask Linda.
Can't hear you, Jeff.
What Jeff said, I'm sorry, we're now rotating my laptop. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just keep rotating the laptop. Duncan is going to really love hearing from us. The Development Review Board may be hogging all the bandwidth. So there are kind of two things going here. One, this item that's been brooded about, let's just use ARPA to run, irrespective of what might be built, let's spend $600,000 to get water and sewer out to the mobile. I don't support that because that really at that point comes down to a handout to the people who live along that stretch of residences there with no obviously visible public good other than increasing the grant list. And somebody did the numbers, maybe Jeff, it may have been you, who pointed out that for the amount of money we'd have to spend to get water and sewer out to the mobile, the increase in the grant list, it would take a very long time for the increased taxes to pay that back. But on the other hand, Browns Court makes all kinds of sense because, as everybody has said, it's already on water and sewer, and we own it. And if it turns out that we could potentially develop on it, then Molly, would somebody like Cathedral Square be interested in coming to the table, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. At one point, as some of you may remember, this was a fun debacle when the police department was just going to build on Browns Court. And the entirety of the discussion was, well, we own it. I mean, I don't remember. That's kind of how I remember it. But I don't know if we had the legal. Were you here when that? Okay. So we clearly need to look at it. But if it should happen that we can build up there, and using some ARPA money to kickstart a project, I would love to hear that. But given that that might take years to do, I'm not holding my breath on that. Any other comments on the idea of using the money for these kind of infrastructural use? Because that's in the capital plan besides buying equipment. As Jeff said, the other stuff is infrastructure. And except for possibly this, I don't really see anybody in suggestions or saying, please build infrastructure. So Tom says, is there a place in downtown corridor that we could use? I'm not aware of one. And if we did, we'd probably have to buy it.
Can you say that question again? I couldn't hear it.
What I asked was, are there any other properties in the downtown core area that could possibly be converted into affordable housing, as opposed to all of the Browns Court? It's not that far, but it's...
Jeff, we can't hear you. We can see your mouth moving.
Yeah, we can't hear.
The Goodwin Baker building is in the downtown core, and that one, the owner, my understanding is the owner is interested in housing for that building, and he's waiting for a change in the zoning. He's very interested in the change for the zoning. Rachel, if you go to the housing committee, I know that Virginia Clark has had conversations with the owner of that building, Sid Miller.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
And if it comes, I don't know if this is important, but if it comes to like going to bat for putting affordable housing on Browns Court, I will be like, hey neighbors, I grew up here and I would love to live in Richmond. Can you please build a house for me? So I'll go to bat for it.
I will too.
So Rachel, does that mean that you'll be able to convince your mom?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
She would love to have me as her like backyard, neighbor. She's not the hardest one to convince on the street, not gonna lie.
Okay, so hopefully I can still be heard. We are at time, but I think we are at a relatively good stopping point too.
Yeah.
To make a suggestion for an agenda item for our next meeting. Okay, so one committee that we have not heard from yet is the Town Center Committee. I think I can find out. We did discuss it at our last meeting, and we had a fruitful discussion. I think we're not quite ready yet to come up with what the ask would be, but we're close. So if we could put the Town Center Committee as one of the our agenda items next meeting, I'll try to move that along so that we have something.
That'd be great.
Okay, Tom.
Can you hear me okay? In terms of process, like what's next? We have the town committee to talk about that for the next week. We can add. My sense is that we're kind of running up against time, and we.
Sorry, as I'm just explaining about Brandon. We have right now approximately somewhere in the range of $506,000 potentially asked from the Transportation Committee. The Recreation Committee. It depends on whether we get the grant, but that's we know what the Transportation Committee's ask is.
Yeah.
The Recreation Committee gave us a list of items with prices. I did hear from Sherry Lynn on the Recreation Committee saying if it should happen that we come up with more things, we come ask for more. I said the select board is free to set aside some money for down the road a ways. We haven't done so. So if we've heard from Transportation, we've heard from Recreation, we talked to Housing to see if and we investigate Brown's Court. We talked to the Town Center Committee. Linda Parent's records request to digitize the land records. At that point, there's not many people left to talk to, unless Josh, you can think of anybody.
Well, one that is sort of in the back of my mind is MMC.
We can't hear Josh.
Right, MMC TV had asked for.
Can you repeat what he said, Jay?
And it's not a ton of money.
We didn't hear that.
Okay.
some point in time, though, we're going to get a running list of, you know, like what the project is. Okay, good. All right.
So Tom just asked, are we going to? Well, I'm going to put together between now and the next meeting, like Tom said, I don't know if you could hear him, a running list of basically all the stuff that, whether it's got an official stamp from the committee, has met with approved, general approbation from the committee. And people will be free, of course, to say, I disagree. No, I don't think we're clear on that one. No, I don't really like that one. But I think we're at the point where things are starting to take shape. Things are starting to gel. And the way I see it is we are not going to be running out of money right away. If we fund what's been asked of us, depending on what the town center committee comes back and asks for, well, that may be where the select board may wind up saying, take everything left over after transportation and recreation. They might. It's conceivable. I mean, it does meet some of the criteria for something that would benefit generations, would be available to all. It's something to look at. But I think we are getting close. I think that we actually probably are in scope to say by May, if we hear from the TAP brand in May, that at that point we'd probably be in a position to say, here are our recommendations.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me too. And it's good to have a sense, and I think it's good for us to keep talking about that. So thank you, Tom, for bringing that up about process.
Okay. So
I think May is a good target date, and that would free up Rachel to join the housing committee.
Okay, so everybody, so we've got items for the next agenda. Is there anything else people would like to throw in before we have a motion to adjourn? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
State your name and your vote.
Rachel, aye.
Molly, aye.
Jay, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you so much. We will get the audiovisual problems worked out one of these days.
Thanks all.